Hi, everyone. See everyone joining there. As you're joining, if you want to just drop in the chat where you're joining us from and let us know if you've used butter before. All right. Get the gifts going. Everyone knows I've used butter before. I know a lot of you here. Give me a thumbs up maybe if you've used butter before, thumbs down if you haven't. We got a couple new butter users in here. You were asking that, Jonathan and Harriet. It looks like a couple people are new butter users here. But we have some people who are already familiar.
Yeah, hello from Brussels. We've got some England people. We're in London. Yeah. Hi from London.
We've got Alex in Australia. Hey, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
James. Well, Alex, what time do you have?
Hi, Dan.
3 a.m.
I recognize your signature beard and background.
Oh, hi, Dan. Wow. I'm in Texas, too. I'm in San Antonio.
Oh, great.
Fantastic. All right. It looks like we've got, you said we had a bunch of RSVPs coming in still, but I think we should go ahead and get started. We can wait for those people to pop in. So we are really excited today to have Jonathan and Harriet with us. And Jonathan is the founder of Mind Over Tech, which I absolutely love the name of this company. I have to tell you, I absolutely love the name of it. And we're going to talk a little bit about intentionally using digital detox in the 2023. And I like the intentionality piece of this. And then we've got Harriet, who is a freelance workshop facilitator, which is close to my heart because I do the freelance thing too. And has been doing workshopping for over a decade, which is amazing. And I'm going to pass it over to you all to give, a little bit more about what we're going to do today and start to get everyone involved.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's such a pleasure for us to be here. And I thought that we could start this is a real ode to Anna Maria and Rachel, actually, because a little while ago in November, I came to a session that Rachel organized with Amy Lucky that was all about movement. And I freaking loved it. It was all about bringing movement into virtual sessions, because that is one piece that we sorely miss. So I thought that as we welcome people, as we're kind of getting moving, that we just do some movement if everyone's up for it. Just getting our bodies moving. I didn't know about you, but I have pretty much been sitting here for the majority of the day so far. It's 4 p.m. here in London. And so I thought we could start with just some head. The bonus of this entire thing is that it gets people looking like a little bit odd, which I just love. I love that. So a little bit of face to the left and to the right, moving your head. Anyone who is off camera right now who feels comfortable turning it on, please do. It does mean the world to us to be able to see your beautiful faces.
I'm liking Said's little kind of shimmy to the left and the right with it as well. That's cool. Yeah, it's got like a little
a little bit of that. Okay, gentle with your necks, though, people. Gentle with your necks. Now, this is my signature one, Anna Maria, which is called Big Face, Small Face. So first you try and make the features of your face as small as possible on your face, like this. And then you try and make them as big as possible, like this. And then just go between the two. If you actually manage to look at the screen, this is also an excellent site. We're all involved. Okay, there's your face.
It's not being recorded.
Let's find your face again. Exactly.
Right, going to make a great gift.
Sure that those people are in for a treat. Right. Hello, people from the future. Hope you're enjoying. Shoulders next. So we're going to start back. This is a good one for anyone that's using a mouse. Hello, shoulders. And you can go then forwards like a wave. Really enjoying the Mexican shoulder wave we have going on here. Independent, bit of like a rolly roll. Alex, loving your work. James, fantastic. Great stuff. Okay, this one is direct from Amy Lucky. Thank you for that. Okay, she called this squeezing lemons. So take your hands Imagine that you're squeezing 2 big juicy lemons in, and you can get the tension all the way up through your whole arm, all the way up and all the way up, and hold it and hold it and hold it, and now release. Oh, that's nice. I actually slightly dug my fingernails into my palms there. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. One more of these. And release. And then wrists, a little bit of wrists, like infinity. See if you can do an infinity on your wrists there. Infinity, nice. Loving Anna Maria's entire hand involvement. Welcome anyone who's joining. We're just diving into movement here. All right, and then I think we should do it. Everyone's being such great sports. I think we should do a little stand up, a little get out of that seat, that it's very warm and very comfy, but let's get out of it and just do a little bit of a hip circle, back and forth, roundabout. Oh, this is a favorite of mine. Hello, funky clicky hips. Anyone get some clicks? Any clicks? Nice. Loving your sound effects team. Right, and then a bit of a side, and then we'll call it a day. Right, okay, so my name's Harriet. I joined Jonathan in 2022 for this ride. I kind of just want to quickly say that for me, in this whole space of tech digital habits, it really shows up because I have 2 kids. And I had a very confronting moment last year when my smallest ran up the stairs with my mobile phone with a face of sheer panic and discomfort that I had been separated from my phone. And he ran upstairs to return it to me to put the world back to rights. And so for me, this whole space of technology is really all about how I show up as a parent as well as my work life. So I'm going to hand over to the brilliant Jonathan, who founded Mind Over Tech, who's going to share a little bit more about kind of the whole philosophy behind Mind Over Tech. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Harriet. Wonderful to be here. Wonderful to meet you all. And yeah, echoing Harriet's statements in terms of the enthusiasm for those movements. That was awesome. So just to say really quickly a little bit about my background and kind of where Mind Over Tech has come from. I've worked for around 10 years in the tech industry. So started off as a web developer, but then kind of slipped into delivering workshops to senior leadership teams at Fortune 500 companies all around the world, teaching workshops around digital transformation. So, explaining what is code, what is machine learning, what is innovation process. And in this, whilst doing this, just kind of observing how amazing it is when what can be accomplished by tech when it's put in people's hands and how empowering it can be. I love technology. I played a lot of video games as a kid. It's always been very inspiring to me. But I was also noticing how at the same time, whilst we're giving people these powerful tools, sometimes if we're using them in ways where we're not always questioning why we're using them in that way, they can also bring in some negative side effects. And this actually showed up in another area of my life. So something else that I'm passionate about is meditation. I've practiced in the Buddhist tradition for nearly 20 years. And I was actually on a retreat in the south of France at this place here. And I'd gone there for my annual retreat, and I was really looking forward to it, to get to know myself a bit better, to get to know my mind. And I kind of had this wake-up call when I found myself locked in a toilet cubicle, scrolling madly through Twitter, basically just, doom scrolling, kind of in a state of avoidance. And I guess we do this, everyone does this all the time, but it was particularly poignant because of where I was. So this kind of personal crisis of my own, loving technology and needing to work in it for my career, but not being happy with my relationship with it, really spurred on a journey. So I began to look all around me and try and understand, okay, which areas of my life is this really showing up and having an impact? And I'm sure you can relate to this, but I saw it everywhere. I saw that my focus and flow was impacted. It was really hard for me to get into, lots of people kind of agreeing with this because of this steady state kind of stream of notifications. My relationships were suffering. For me and those around me are so easily engrossed by these beautiful personal devices that actually being fully present, whether it was with clients or sometimes was affected. My agency or sense of motivation was also impacted. I constantly felt short on time. And yet, even though I was short on time, I was seemingly wasting lots of time kind of scrolling through social media, as I mentioned before. My mental well-being was definitely impacted. I constantly felt in a state of anxiety from lots of unread messages and social media comparison. My physical well-being. So we've just been doing these movements now, definitely sat at a computer all day, but also I don't know if you noticed that thing where if you're at a screen for a long time, your breathing becomes really shallow and actually not very good quality. Or as it says here, even maybe not getting a best night's sleep because of my screens. And then finally, my sense of purpose. I felt that actually I was spending so much time stuck in echo chambers, which had very interesting kind of bits of information, but actually they were quite hollow when I looked into them, and they didn't really connect with what really mattered to me in my life. So I can see that lots of you are kind of agreeing here with these emojis, but just if Harriet can throw up, we've got a quick poll. I was just kind of curious because I basically covered 6 areas of our lives across those kind of 6 examples. And I'm just curious for you, and you can choose more than one, and then you have to hit submit at the end of the poll. But in which areas of your digital life, in which areas of your life have digital habits had a negative impact for you? So I'd love to hear that. And because I'm still showing my screen, I can't see the results. So maybe Harriet could give a bit of commentary.
Yeah, we've got some results coming in. We've got 4 votes for focus and flow. Focus and flow is currently winning. 7 now. Relationships is close behind. I feel like a sports newscast here. Physical health is coming up. And I do click all of these, but yeah, sense of purpose and mental health, motivation also getting votes. But yeah, focus and flow currently definitely resonating the most.
Yeah. Great, yeah, and that's very common. So I guess the thing is here, to know that you're not alone feeling these things. Whenever we run these workshops, people kind of say that they come up against issues like this across all areas of their life. And in some ways, it's no surprise, right? Because we're using technology all the time, and we hear more and more about how it's designed in ways to kind of engage us in perhaps maybe not the best ways. But on my journey to try and basically be more intentional about the way that I use my technology, I created Mind Over Tech as a company, and we run workshops with companies and create products and services to help people manage this relationship. But just to say a little bit more about my journey with this, I began by actually asking a question. And if you haven't already, you can close that poll now, Harriet.
All closed.
Thank you. I actually kind of started by asking myself, is technology actually responsible? I felt that it was playing a big role, but to do any exploration like this properly, it's good to kind of go right to the root. And in a way, this question is actually a centuries, if not millennia old debate around what role does technology have responsibility to, and to what extent do we have responsibility? And there's actually kind of 2 strong views around this, and one of them is called determinism, technological determinism. And if you're a determinist, you would believe, or you would be of the opinion that technology is actually a very powerful force which operates outside of man's control. So, for example, what you see here in the background is the first, or one of the earliest combustion engines that was created. So, determinists would believe that the very fact that the combustion engine was created basically meant that traffic jams and busy roads and pollution and global warming were essentially inevitable from that point on, and that technology would lead us down that path, and it was to a certain extent out of our control. Whereas an instrumentalist would say, no, that's not right at all. Technologies are like neutral artifacts. They're like the tools you see on the screen here. We can pick them up and use them when we want and when we choose, and they are subservient to our wishes. And I think already maybe you get a feeling for yourself. Actually, you can kind of agree with both of those to a certain extent. Like it's not a clear-cut answer, but ultimately we do have some agency. It's not all about the technology, and of course, big tech has lots of things it needs to improve on, and that's part of what we spend most of our time reading about in the news these days. But we do all have a certain amount that we can do for ourselves, and a certain amount of responsibility that we can take for ourselves. And the thing with technologies, like I mentioned the combustion engine, That would be an example of what might be called a physical technology. So a technology extends our capacity to move quickly or to kind of act powerfully. Digital technologies are a very specific kind of technology which basically extend our capacity for the mind. They extend our capacity to think conceptually, to share information and ideas. So actually, it's very, very entwined with our mind. So, but the next step on my journey was to educate myself a little bit more about how our minds work and how our attention works. Could you just let me know how much time I've got left in this agenda point? Because again, I can't see it with the screen share.
Yeah, we're on 8.5 minutes out of 13. So
great, thanks. So I began looking into understanding like how does the human mind and attention work. And what I discovered is that even back when we were primates, we've basically survived by observing things in our environment and then reacting to those perceptions. And this is what's called the perception action cycle. So, and the quality of this cycle is that it's deeply reflexive and habitual. So imagine that you hear a loud noise and you flinch or you run away from it, or you perceive warmth as a primate and you move towards it. Now, as we've evolved into humans, our brains have grown, we've gained all of these higher levels of functionality in our brains. And these are commonly referred to, and I'm sure you've heard of this term before, executive functions. And what our executive functions allow us to do are things like planning, long-term planning, complex problem solving, regulating our emotions, and making complex decisions. I guess you could say these things maybe go a long way to define who we are as humans or differentiate us as humans. And the way that these work is that these executive functions allow us to form top-down goals and to stay on track with them. So let's say your top-down goal was to, let's just say concentrate on writing a report. Your initial perception of some people dancing outside in the street, this is a crazy example, but let's just say that, like instead of rushing to a reaction of running out and dancing in the street with them, your top-down goal is basically creating a pause there where you can then apply your long-term thinking, your planning, or your emotional regulation probably in this scenario, and say, no, like I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm going to stay on track with this. And this is very effective. It works. And because our brain is very powerful. In terms of body mass, it only takes up 4% of our bodies, but the brain consumes about 20% of our body's energy. So it's like we can direct our minds very strongly, but it takes quite a lot of energy to do so. So I'm going somewhere with this, but bear with me. Now that I've introduced that information, at this point in my studies into our attention, I was also curious about, is it just me that's engaging with my phone a lot, or is it other people as well? And this was back in 2016. And I found this study that was done by a company called D-Scout, and they installed an app on thousands of people's phones to kind of observe how often people touch their phone and engage with it. And what they found was basically an average user touched their phone every 6 minutes a day during waking hours. So every 6 minutes of the day on average, some kind of an engagement with the phone and kind of touching and using the phone. And it breaks down like this. So this diagram is a bit hard to read at first, but at the bottom, we've got midnight through to midnight. So across 24 hours, we've got an average user on the top row and an engaged user on the bottom row. And every white line is basically one engagement with the phone. And where you've got a fat line, it's many back to back. So you can see really this is true. It's not that they're all clumped in a certain part of the day. It's this kind of constant rhythm all of the time of us engaging with our devices. And of course, this has an impact on our productivity. There's this great study in Australia where people shadowed people working in an open plan office, trying to understand how long do they spend on a work episode working on a task, and what distracts them. And they found that basically 3 minutes was the average time that someone spent working on something before they got distracted. And you've probably heard that that information that it takes us up to 20 minutes to regain our focus once our focus is broken. So no wonder we're spending all this time kind of feeling like we're behind, and it's 4 PM and we've not even got down to the actual work that we want to do. 86 daily interruptions. But it's not just an impact on our productivity, but also on our well-being as well. This scenario I mentioned before of like setting the top-down goal of finishing this report, whenever that, when you're focusing on the report, once the first notification perception comes up or your phone vibrates, you don't pick the phone up, because your executive functions say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus. That works, but it uses quite a lot of energy. And here, this Labrador is representing very scientifically our executive function. At time, once every 6 minutes during waking hours, it's basically kicking in, helping us stay focused, but using up a lot of energy at the same time. And actually, over the course of the day, it gets tired and it starts to release more and more cortisol into our system, which is the fight or flight hormone. And so we actually have to end up spending a lot of time in this fight or flight state in our nervous system, which again is fine every now and again. But when it's once it's every day, and there's this great phrase like, how you spend your day is how you spend your year, and how you spend your year is how you spend your life. So actually, this is the modern condition. We're spending so much time in this part of our system, and it's not great for us. So what can we do about it? Well, Rachel mentioned digital detox right at the beginning of this call. And I think it's important to say that for Mind Over Tech, there are benefits in taking digital detox, but the whole point of this story is it's not practical. Like I certainly can't do my work as a web developer or a trainer of digital transformation if I have to have my devices locked away all the time. So the first thing that I did was, out of desperation, I just stuck a post-it note on my phone and wrote the word intention on it. And the idea here was that I wanted to even just make myself aware in the first place that I was looking at my phone, because quite often it was so habitual and autonomous that I didn't even realize that's what was going on. And this really worked. It made a massive difference for me until it lost its stick and fell off. And a few weeks later, I kind of slipped back into old habits. But there was something very powerful in this, running this tiny micro experiment to disrupt my behavior in a small way that was very compelling. And over time, I gathered hundreds of different small experiments like this. And as we were running workshops with corporate clients to help them with their digital habits, this basically evolved into a fully fledged toolkit that we've built called the Digital Habit Lab, which has got hundreds of different experiments, bite-sized experiments. And today, what I want to do is get them in your hands, and we're going to engage with like a digital version of this deck, get you all to choose an experiment to run in the next 24 hours. And we're going to set it up so that we can all have a go at disrupting our own digital habits at the beginning of the year to kind of hopefully give us a bit of help as we step back into work life. I'm sure I've run over time a little bit on this, but
a couple of minutes. You're doing great.
Okay, fine. I'm stopping sharing now. So thanks for listening to me talk for a really long time. Hopefully it was engaging as we kind of step into this now. So what we're going to do now is, if you could open up that Miro board, Harriet.
Miro board or the experiment card overview?
I think let's just jump straight to the Miro board.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you. So now, I'm sure lots of you have used Miro before. If you could be like in the spirit of digital distraction and kind of staying focused, if you could resist engaging with the board for one moment, I'll just kind of orientate us a little bit. But basically, we've got 50 experiments here from the deck, and we're going to give you like around 4 minutes to just take a look through this, just to familiarize yourself with some of the experiments. Lots of them you might be familiar with already, or you might even have tried some of them yourself already. And if that's the case, what I'd love you to do is grab a post-it note. You can do that by clicking on the sticky note bar on the left or pressing N on your keyboard, and drop a sticky note by one of the experiments and just leave your name on it. So we can kind of begin to get a sense of how many of these experiments you might have tried in one form or another for yourself. So Anna Maria has a comment.
Just to make sure that we're all looking at the same thing, could you please summon us to you?
Yes.
Just use bring everyone to me.
Bring everyone to me.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So this is the kind of zoomed out view, but hopefully from here you can zoom in yourselves to kind of actually read the bits individually. If you're having trouble with that, just let us know and I can help orientate you. But otherwise, yeah, Harriet, do you want to just start do we have that music?
Yeah, we've got some Mind Over Tech specially composed music to kind of tinkle in the background. You can, as Butter can do, you can turn it down and turn it off if it's distracting, but it's quite nice to have something playing when we're all doing independent stuff. We've got 5 minutes here, have a look through, and Yeah.
And Jonathan, just to make sure everyone understands what we're doing, what we're doing right now is we're dropping a Post-it with our name on it next to ones we've tried. Is that right? Okay.
That's exactly right. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. That's great. It's always so interesting just to watch this and kind of see how specific experiments, like lots of people have tried already, and some of them are kind of completely new. And I guess the other thing to say whilst you're doing this is, like I mentioned before, where we're headed with this is that ultimately we're going to get you to pick an experiment that you'd like to run for yourself over the next 24 hours. So I guess that's the other thing. Once you've now you've begun to familiarize yourself with what's there a little bit more, you might want to start bearing that in mind. You don't need to make any decisions yet, but keep that in the back of your mind. A lot of people trying eating meals without screens. That's good. And Pomodoro technique. Great, okay. So I think we can kind of slowly start to wind that down. And in a minute, or in a moment rather, when we stop the music, it would be really nice to hear from a couple of people, and feel free just to unmute yourself and kind of jump in, just to share, one of the experiments that you've put your name next to, and also just share a tiny bit about your experience of running that experiment. Whether that's something that you found to be helpful, or whether it was something that you struggled to get to work for you. So perhaps, we could stop that music now, Harriet. And like I said, be brave and feel free just to unmute and share. And if everyone's feeling a little bit reserved, unfortunately, you've all left your names next to experiments, so I can start to kind of call on people in a second.
I've always had pretty good luck with the one thing, just as a general thought of doing the next thing that's most important.
Great. So in the purpose section in the bottom right, the last card there, do just the one thing. Cool. Sorry, Dan, I interrupted you. But where have you found that's kind of been the most effective for you?
I've always said that, I've been out of corporate for a couple decades, and I've always said the one part I miss about it is that if I wasn't feeling it, I could just go in and like mindlessly do my job and leave because someone else came up with all the tasks. I didn't have to do that part. So just going through my list and then, going, okay, pause. What is the thing that will make everything else easier or irrelevant? Definitely helps with going through that list a second time and things standing out to me. So it's a very brute force type of thing, the way my brain works, to make that happen. But I'm always glad to go to.
Yeah, thank you. I think what's interesting as well with, particularly if we're engaging with digital technology or our phones, they're designed in such a way that, our phone can do so many different things, which is amazing, but it makes doing one thing really hard. Like, how many times have you gone to check the time and then read a message that popped up and then ended up booking tickets for a concert before actually forgetting that you were meant to be checking the time in the first place, right? It's so difficult. So yeah, I think whether it's a to-do list like you're talking about, or even just embodying this intention to just try and stay on track, this is definitely a really powerful one. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to share their experience? It could be one which didn't work for them as well. And Kat Hayes, is it?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
So I seem to be the only person who's put my name next to observe a digital Sabbath.
Yeah.
But me and a friend did this a number of years ago, where we had, we called it Fuck Tech Thursdays, where
Nice.
after work, we just didn't touch any tech. So no phone,
Yeah.
no TV. It was really difficult, but it was like from kind of 5 p.m. till 9 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
And it was quite nice in some ways,
Yeah.
even though it was really hard. It was good.
How long did you keep that kind of habit for?
Probably a few months, I think, between us. And we did, probably the first thing we did at 9 a.m. the next morning was like, how did you find that? But yeah, for a while. And it's something I'd like to bring back, but probably not quite as extreme as we did it.
Sure. Yeah. So I think what's really nice about this, we call these cards experiment cards because they're just that. They're not necessarily things that you should do all forever, but even just trying them out for a short time means that you can gain an insight into your digital habits that you may not already have, and then you can take those learnings and bring them back into your daily life. So that idea of kind of coming back and doing them every now and again for a while is really powerful. Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, hello. I couldn't find this on the card, but one experiment that I've tried is setting a time limit on my phone for like certain apps. So 10 minutes of playing games or something on my phone per day, and then once the 10-minute hits, then it just logs me off, and I'm no longer allowed to use that app during the whole day. So
so using an app like Freedom or something like that to kind of block activity in certain places.
Yeah, I found that to be effective, especially when looking at the phone and seeing which apps are taking up most of my time during the day, and then putting a limit on that app, and then seeing how behavior changes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks very much. Just out of curiosity, and it may not be the case, but a devil's advocate question: has anyone tried using a tool or an app like that to block things and found that it really doesn't work for them? That it's kind of either got in the way or they've just kind of ended up not using it?
I have the lock screen, I think it's called, for iPhone between 10 and 8 in the morning. Because of the blue light and etc. And it was very hard for me at the beginning because I haven't really replaced it with anything else. So I was using my phone in the morning with coffee and then in the evening to relax or detach or whatever. And I blocked it, and then I kind of went and overrode it because I haven't set out anything else in its place. And then I said, okay, I need to pick up a fiction book that has nothing to do with our world. And I found that was much more easier to resist the temptation to go and override that part.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. And that illustrates a really great point that, everyone's needs from technology are different, and everyone is different. So what works for one person may not work so well for another, or something that works well for you today may not even be great in the next 6 months. So a lot about what we are about at Mind Over Tech is not only disrupting habits, but creating a long-term practice, basically, of constantly checking back in with ourselves to see what do we need right now and what's working or not working for us right now. I think we've got 2 more here that we'll take. Is it Isi? Is that how you pronounce your name? Sorry.
Hi, it's AJ.
Hi, AJ. Sorry, AJ.
No worries.
Hi.
I've tried a couple of these, but the one that I want to mention that didn't work for me. I think usually it's more interesting to talk about like the failed experiments.
Yeah, definitely.
The notification management one. was that I blocked. Actually, it's still blocked on my phone. Like when I blocked the email, Slack, social media notifications on my phone, I found out that I'm actually checking those apps more because I'm curious that if I'm missing any notification. So it made me check my phone and those apps even more. So I turned them back so that at least that I can decide on if I want to read the email or not, but I don't have this feeling of missing something.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks for sharing that. I had, for myself, when I started experimenting with that, I turned all my WhatsApp notifications off and had that exact thing where I just felt really anxious that I was missing important messages. We do actually run a workshop at Mind Tech, which goes quite deep into the different notification settings, because phones are actually really powerful nowadays about, even on a granular level, being able to kind of have more confidence that you're not kind of blocking important things. But it's quite fiddly and it takes time to do. So I can totally appreciate what you're saying. Thanks, Ajay. We'll take James and then we'll move on, I think.
Hi there. I had probably a few that I'm trying to focus on this year, mostly around having the phone next to the bed. So charging it, on your nightstand, and not using it as an alarm clock. I find also, not having the blue light before bed, and also wanting to read more books. So, rather than scrolling through LinkedIn or Instagram or things like that, or reading articles, it's much better to immerse yourself in a real, lengthy piece of writing, and fiction too. So there's lots of sort of thoughts around that kind of area for me.
Yeah, thank you. I can really relate to that in terms of, I love reading, and I don't know if anyone has this experience, but I think like the point you're trying to, which I heard you saying there, is, we spend so much time skim reading online or kind of quickly reading from different chats and things. Actually, I almost feel like my muscle for being patient enough to read a long form piece of fiction is almost like that's atrophied, and I need to relearn how to do that. And that means creating the right boundaries to actually allow myself to do that. I can see you nodding, James, and I think that's something that lots of people relate to. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So, like I said, we're going to encourage you to now all pick an experiment that you are going to try for yourselves over the next 24 hours. And as I said before, it's an experiment, right? It's like, it doesn't matter if you fail it. In fact, there is no failing. Even if something doesn't go as you planned, there's always a lot that you can learn from what you've seen has happened. But in a moment, within the Miro board, I'm just going to start a 1-minute poll. And what that will do is it will turn each of the experiment cards into an interactive button, and everyone gets one vote. So take the minute and just click on the card that you are going to choose for the experiment that you want to run over the next 24 hours for yourself. So I'm going to start that now. And after we've done this, then we're just going to share a bit about some frameworks that we've created at Mind Tech that are going to help you make the most of running that experiment. So I'm going to hit start on here now. I think you're going to need to click join the voting, and then choose carefully as you pick your experiment for the next day. Great, so we've got 30 seconds left. I can see we've got 8 out of 18 people voted. Great, last 10 seconds. Wonderful. Okay, so we'll just wait a second for Miro to do its magic. So you can see from the top, like a couple of people are going to use the Pomodoro technique. Said's reminding us that there's a Pomodoro plugin. Yeah, there's so many, obviously, interestingly, layers of technology that we can kind of reapply to help us with these things. And then actually, I'm just going to have a look at all the results here. Great. Okay, so quite actually, as I was saying before, everyone has different needs from technology, and this is really represented in the fact that there's quite a lot of different experiments here. There aren't that many people that have chosen the same one, so that's great. So, like I said, now it's all about how do we actually get the most out of this? Because, and I'm just going to close this now, because statistically, the majority of you, however inspired or enthused you might feel right now, the majority of you, if we just stop the session now, probably wouldn't run your experiment over the next 24 hours. I'm not saying this because I don't trust you. It's just that this, you know, we're busy people, and actually, I'm sure lots of you have read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, but in that he talks about something called implementation intentions. And what that basically means is the power of visualizing ahead of time actions that you perform, or habits or behaviors that you want to adopt, to kind of increase your chances of actually engaging in them well. And so what I'm just gonna reshare my screen quickly. Once you've chosen an experiment, as you will have, what we then really encourage people to do is to take a moment to actually kind of ask themselves a series of questions. So and this is what helps us visualize and plan our experiment. So things to consider could be like, do I have everything that I need in order to run this experiment over the next 24 hours? So for example, someone mentioned using an alarm clock instead of your phone. You know, like, do I have an alarm clock? Do I know which one I'm going to use, for example? Considering when and where will I set everything up so that I'm kind of ready to do this, and I'm not leaving it to the absolute last second, because that's obviously not going to help. Also considering, you know, there's this great phrase that Harriet and I came across recently called a pre-mortem, as opposed to a post-mortem, where you're kind of literally anticipating what's the most likely thing to go wrong, and how would I feel. So, you know, what one thing is most likely to derail me from trying this experiment. Also considering how long will I do it for. What I loved about hearing you talk about the experiments you'd run already was you had quite set ideas about what you would do instead of looking at your phone. Or, for example, on the digital Sabbath that was being shared, that you had a clear beginning and end time. If you don't get explicit about these things, the experiment's quite vague, and it's difficult to know if you're really doing it or not. And another thing could be literally, you know, how can I remind myself to even start doing it in the first place? This is obviously not an exhaustive list, but these things are really helpful to consider to kind of help get the most from this. So what we're just going to do quickly again here, if I just stop sharing this, is as a group, but we're not going to have time to plan everybody's experiment. Would you mind, Harriet, in the next section, there is another Miro board called Design Your Experiment. If you could open that one up. What we're just going to do very quickly as an exercise is, as a group, kind of brainstorm, visualizing, planning just one experiment. And even though this may not be the experiment that you've chosen, hopefully this will help you get deep into the mindset of how to go about planning your own experiment, so you can kind of do this for yourself once the session is over. So you can see here I've just chosen the experiment, avoid early morning tech use. I think rather than get everyone to fill out post-it notes, I'm just going to get people to call out some answers to this, and then I'll fill them in. So if we had a friend who was running an avoid early morning tech use experiment tomorrow, if we just start with the first question, do I have everything I need to do this? What kind of things do you think would be helpful for them to consider? So yeah, just feel free to unmute and kind of share on that. So in actual fact, that first question may not be the most useful one to start for this particular experiment. So I could start. So if we go to the second question, when and where will I set everything up? Avoid early morning tech use could be, the first thing could be actually, where will I keep my phone? Because I know that if I'm running this experiment, if my phone is just out there in front of me, I'm already going to really struggle in doing
what
that.
am I going to do during that time? For example, if I want to read a book, that should be near me. So the things that I want to do should be near me.
Yeah,
things that
great.
Should be away.
Great. So have a desired activity nearby. Yeah. How about some of the things that are most likely to derail you? What could you all imagine for yourselves would be the most likely thing to interrupt your practicing this experiment?
World is going to end.
The world's going to end. Yeah.
Having your phone as your alarm, like first thing that wakes you, first thing you look at.
Yeah. Thank you. Like if you've got a meeting booked for early in the morning, for example, be another one.
It could be boredom. Like if you have nothing to do during that time, or if it's out of habit potentially, like you pick it up every time, like you'll fail in the first couple of times potentially.
Thanks, Rajul. Yeah, I think probably lots of people can relate to that. You know, that even if, I mean, in fact, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, whoever mentioned they'd done the digital Sabbath experiment, but you know, they were saying it was really hard. They'd chosen not to engage, but it is difficult. And actually boredom, you know, a lot of the time when we use our technology, there's a deeper reason inside us about something that we're either uncomfortable with or want to avoid. And so boredom can often rear up quite quickly when we're doing something like this. So even just acknowledging that could happen and naming it as something to look out for is going to dramatically increase the value of the experiment, because you'll notice it more when it arises, and then maybe be able to work with that a bit more. Great. Let's just get a couple for how can I remind myself to do it, and then we'll stop here.
Post-it note like you did for your phone. Accountability like you're doing right now, like your mother, your brother, your fiance, wife keeps you accountable.
Yeah.
Leave your phone in a different room.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Put your phone not next to your bed, so you're like, where is it? Oh yeah.
So that almost then becomes like a bit of a nighttime routine before, like that's maybe when you're at that point where your experiment begins, for example. So then this question of how long will I do it for as well, then you might choose some times. So I think we won't spend more time on this, but hopefully it's been helpful to show that even though it might feel a bit like, I kind of know this, do I really need to do this? Actually, even just taking the 3 minutes that we've taken to do this, you can actually start to dig really deep into it. And the more time you spend on this, the more value I can guarantee you will get out of your experiment that you're running.
How did you come up with these questions? Is it based on the atomic habits, or will it vary depending on the card as well?
Yeah, I think, it's those questions aren't, I'll reshare my screen actually. They're not kind of definitive. I think, as you say, it depends on the experiment. Really as well, like I said, ultimately, in an ideal world, this is becoming a practice where maybe once a week you would run a new experiment. So you kind of do this again and again. And over time, I think you would learn for yourself, what are the best things to be considering at this point. So we're kind of nearly done in terms of my part of this presentation. And just to say, or to remind ourselves that, as I said before, this is an image from some experiments run in the 1940s about basically conditioning the behavior of subjects by designing their environments. It's done by a guy called B.F. Skinner. You might have heard of it before. But the point of this is that if you have a scenario where you have varied rewards, i.e. sometimes something's happening or sometimes it's not, that setup will actually make it almost irresistible for you to engage with that thing. And the clearest example of that is slot machines and gambling machines, for example, which were built around this idea that sometimes you get a reward and sometimes you don't. You're pushing a button each time to make it happen. But that particular setup is incredibly compulsive. And our phones have been designed using the same methodologies. And, this is the Prime Minister of Norway playing Pokemon Go in Parliament in 2016. And I'm not sharing this picture here to shame her. I'm sharing this because I see myself in this picture. I see myself in the times when I've spent with my nephews and I've wanted to be present with them, but I've been distracted by an app that I don't ultimately care about, or I may not even be just that I'm using in that moment. And in that sense, what we're really looking at here is behavior change and habit change. And this is really powerful and it's difficult. And that's why having not only resources like the Digital Habit Lab, but also communities of support, accountability are really helpful for this. And we've developed a number of different frameworks at Mind Over Tech, and one of them is called M.O.R.E, and that's just what I want to leave you with. So the point here being, or we often use this phrase more in terms of like, how can I get more out of my technology? And what M.O.R.E here means is, in the first instance, it means to mobilize. And mobilize means to show up for yourself, to inspire yourself to make some small change. And hopefully some of the presentation and conversation today has helped create a moment of mobilization for you right now. And then taking that moment of mobilization and then observing. So before you do anything, just take a moment to choose, let's say, your emails, for example, and just observe, how is my relationship with my email right now? What data can I gather about that? How do I feel about it? Or actually, not how do I feel about it? That's the next step. This is just purely data gathering. And then once you've done that, then taking some time to reflect. Now it's, how do I feel about it? Is it aligning with my goals? Is it helping me do what I want? If so, great, because technology is amazing and we are about using it. But if we can see that that relationship is not perfect, then what could I do? What could I change to try and improve that, even by 1%? And that's where the experiment comes in. Take one of the cards, create your own experiment, and do one thing to disrupt your behavior, after which point you come round back to remobilize. That means showing up again the next day and the next and the next. So that over time, this is a practice which keeps going, which means that no matter what new technologies arrive, or no matter what kind of crunch periods are happening in your work, you have a system which can really help you create those small moments of space or connecting with yourself to actually kind of navigate the day. Good. All right. I'm going to stop now and just hand over briefly to Harriet, who's just going to share a little bit about some potential next steps if you want to go deeper with this. And then if there's any time left at the end, then I'm happy to stick around for some Q&A as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, if you could keep sharing your screen, so just so we could share visuals of some of the stuff. But obviously, Jonathan has highlighted some of the work that Mind Over Tech do in terms of the incredible Digital Habit Lab deck. These are physical cards. They were on my desk. Oh, they're over there. Here we go. These beautiful cards. I think that obviously the world of resolving this challenge of technology is there's lots of opportunities to do that with technology. But I think what Jonathan's done to kind of create something physical is inspired, because it immediately snaps you to the physical world, and having these cards and these experiments, which you've had a taste of, can be an incredible, powerful way of starting to work through some of the challenges and improve that relationship. The second thing I wanted to highlight is that we have a community. I've seen Dan in that community. We've got Alexander and Rajul here today who are in the Mind Over Tech community. So we launched this at the end of last year, and it's a space where we run weekly challenges, because I think part of the trickiness of this area is that, unlike maybe ditching alcohol or cigarettes, it's not something you can necessarily go cold turkey on. It's entwined in so many different parts of our lives. And as Jonathan said, we both have a background in technology. We both love technology. We think it's incredible and amazing, in powerful, and connects people and does all these wonderful things, but it does come with a cost and a loss at times. And so by having these regular challenges, we work together to try and run through experiments and do that together. So thanks for dropping the link in there, Jonathan. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight is that at the moment we are launching a new course that is running and is kicking off this month. We actually have Alex with us, who will be running and joining us in the course launch. There's details on the Mind Over Tech Accelerator on the website, but that is a kind of the next stage in working through this challenge. And what we decided was, in addition to workshops and experiments, that we would also layer on top one-to-one coaching. So it's a very personalized experience where learners get to kind of conduct experiments, dig in. We've got some expert guests joining us. We've also got lots of yummy experience, everyone coming on that accelerator. So if you want to find out more about that, you can take a look at the website. We would love to see you there. And if you have any questions, we're more than happy to jump on a call and talk through the accelerator and what that looks like. Otherwise, I think I'll hand back to JG and maybe any questions from all of you and comments on the things that we shared.
Yeah, I'll leave it to Anna-Maria and Rachel to kind of guide us into when we need to stop. But you know, I have a bit of time, so if anyone has any questions about any of the content,
Dan has a question.
Great.
Dan is straight in. Let's give him the mic.
Hey Dan.
I'm like some people earlier.
Oh, Dan.
I like to play the devil's advocate.
No, you're good for me.
No.
Oh,
good?
Just
okay.
Me.
So like some people throughout this, I like to play the devil's advocate sometimes and just think about the opposite. And I'm wondering how you guys might tackle failure, right? So we're setting these things up. We want to be better. We do these things and stumble, fall. And it's like, okay, I've now created an environment where I'm making myself feel like shit all the time. So how do you kind of approach that? We all know it's going to happen. Do you have anything to kind of set yourself up for success during failure?
Yes, absolutely. Just to make sure I understand you right, when you say you kind of set up an environment that makes yourself feel like shit, do you mean just that is the reality of our modern working environment? Is that what you mean by that? Or did you mean something else?
Yeah, like if I was to do an experiment and then fail it and I feel like crap, I'm like, well, I did that to myself, even though I realized internally that wasn't the case. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a wonderful point. And I mentioned it a little, like very briefly earlier, but we've called these experiments for a reason. Because if you think about it in terms of, you know, obviously in the startup world, you know, everyone's always about, you know, celebrate failure or whatever. But until you really start trying to live that yourself, you don't know how painful that feeling really is. But the thing is, if you think about being a scientist and running an experiment, you can't fail an experiment. Like everything you get back is data. If you run an experiment to not engage with your phone in the early morning, and you ran it for a week and you didn't manage to do that every morning of the week, yes, that might feel a bit frustrating, but actually the value of what you've learned about actually how powerful that relationship with your phone is and how little agency you have, even though it's maybe a little bit painful, you shouldn't feel bad about it. Actually, you've done a lot of work yourself to truly understand that this is something that you may want to spend a bit more time and energy doing. So in that sense, yeah, I would very much encourage people to take that attitude that if I'm not doing this to try and succeed, and because also the thing is, you know, I'm sure everyone can relate to this. You know, you might have a great relationship with your email one week, but that doesn't mean that it won't be terrible in 6 months' time. None of these things are static. So it's really about just, like I said, observing, reflecting, experimenting with where you are right now. But what you say is so important, because bringing in an attitude of kindness to yourself and also to other people as well around you in this is absolutely vital. And I think actually having a community of support to talk with whilst you're doing this can be very helpful.
I appreciate that insight, and I just wrote down nothing is static. It's so on the nose, and I help entrepreneurs look and sound good on camera, and cameras are terrifying things. So I'm constantly dealing with this, like setting yourself up for failure feeling in myself and others. So I appreciate your insight.
I'm sure you've seen me not looking at the camera most of the time with my dual screen setup. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Looks like, oh, Kat was asking what was seeing myself in others experiment. So yeah, seeing myself in others, that, like, my personal experience of that is, I don't know if you can relate to this, but sometimes if I'm traveling on public transport in London, not sometimes, every time I step into a bus or a carriage, pretty much everyone around me is, you know, in their phone. Fine. For some reason, when I see someone playing Candy Crush or scrolling through social media on public transport, that irritates me so much. I don't know what and I think it's because I can see what I know I do all the time, but mirrored in front of me happening in someone else. And somehow the posture and seeing that repetitive movement makes me see something that I can't see when I'm doing myself, in terms of how unpresent I am in those moments. And that can be quite painful, but that therefore is also a really powerful opportunity to actually, again, mobilize, show up for yourself and spark inspiration to change. So seeing yourself in others is really that, observing how other people use their tech, not in a judgmental way, but in a compassionate way, to say, actually, you know, we're all struggling with this. Like, I can see from the third person that I don't want to be like that, and using that as a moment of inspiration. Cool. Good. All right.
Right, we have hit 5 o'clock, so or the end of this session, whatever time it is for you in your time zone. So thank you so much for joining us all. Jonathan and I are happy to stay on a bit longer if people do have more questions. So feel free to stick around. But it's been
or equally, at any point, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn
absolutely.
or social media or whatever, and happy to continue the conversation.
I think Anna Maria had to drop off, but Rachel, thank you so much for hosting and inviting us today.
Anna Maria, she had to go off camera, but she can stay on, so the session can stay open if you want. But I do have to hop. So
okay, wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah. So just to reiterate, as Harriet said, if you feel free to log off if you don't have anything else to say or to ask. But if you do have questions, stick around and we'll be here for you.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you're on the Butter community at all, we're happy to start a thread there for any further questions. And you can ask questions there on the Butter community. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us.